denominator.
On the
I
road.
think it is.
I'm like, let me count the things.
I don't see her yet.
Okay, so we'll start. I'm gonna call this meeting to order. The meeting of the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee for September 11th. We'll go around and just do attendance. I'm Assistant Mayor Kelly. We'll start this way.
Beth Moreau. Jen Stebbins Thomas.
Mary Lone.
John O'Leary.
And for staff,
Peter Bretz, Director of Planning and Sustainability.
You can remember.
Peter Stith, planning manager.
And John. Did you have to read it?
I see that committee membership and I was.
I had to think what my name was.
we're just making sure that we have a quorum. More here than missing one. Oh, not this one.
Should just be two.
1,
Oh,
2,
Andrew.
3, 4, 5,
Six.
6.
7 is Tracy, or you have Tracy.
Yeah. So we have 12 members?
Do we have 12 members?
Because I think it was
Andrew?
11.
Yeah,
and
when you added
Andrew
Andrew.
joined.
Yeah, so we don't have a quorum
Oh,
Okay. Until somebody else shows up.
until somebody else shows up.
we can have
We
discussion.
can have discussion,
We just can't.
vote.
Until we have one more person.
Oh,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Can we maybe do a little like catch up?
yeah.
Where
Kind of
we
where we're
are
at for the
in-
year, what, a great question.
Because unfortunately I missed the last two meetings.
Same.
Yeah.
And we've missed you.
I also
so much.
Is Andrew on?
I missed you.
I would say the
Right.
same, but I was pretty happy where I was.
And then you had.
I missed you.
Flat
I
tire.
think we should also, Peters, maybe if we send out or John and I can do it, an email to all the committee members to see if they are still willing to be engaged, as we've kind of moved through the process and see if people no
Perhaps
longer.
remind people that that commitment is only through.
The end of the year.
December.
Is it through just December?
Yeah, and then, because this is a blue ribbon committee, then whoever
The
the
new
next.
council gets
the
to
new
choose what they want.
Council will decide if they want to continue this committee or not continue this committee, and then people can reapply or not reapply. We would love for everyone to still be here, but if people want to segue off.
As of right now, there's not even enough people to fill council, so.
It's not next Tuesday yet, no.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. You never know.
Okay.
There could be a big rush. Where are we? Well, we finished Sherbert. It's in the hands of the city manager. We were involved in and blessed the Commerce Way
Gina.
Gina.
Is that a term of art, blessed?
Yes.
That's right. That's it's a governance term.
Okay.
We shepherded along.
Yeah.
Gina.
And created that housing trust fund and all that. Then we worked on barriers to the housing supply. And that was in your packet. We reported that out to the council. We had make parking part of the site review, ease the dimensional requirements, turn Heritage Ave and Constitution and places like that into gateway zoning. Use the Islington Street example, older Victorians that once were single family could go up to 3 to 6 units. And that's very constrained right now. And we also reported on our conversations with developers. Parking, they also echo parking relief. Reduce the allowable size per unit downtown to 300 square feet. The 1% loan fund idea, like Lebanon and Hanover, and I can tell you we've made some more progress on that. And whether we should allow lots of height. But we later heard from RKG, even if you allowed some areas to go up to 8 to 10 stories, the economics don't work.
6 is probably your most.
Yeah.
6 is the sweet spot. Those were reported out, but for any action to happen, we need to recommend some. Now, some of these.
So sorry, because I'm sort of a novice here. They're reported to city council
And then city council's like, sounds good, let us know if you have any recommendations, so this group has to go back to say, we recommend.
This group could also, and one of the things we've talked about is this group recommending some things to planning board.
Okay.
When it comes to like site review or parking and some of that stuff that is really
Moving parking into site review.
into site plan or site review, you know, some of the things that we essentially, the council essentially asked for hey, what have you guys been doing for 16 months? Just give us a brief summary. So we did that. Now kind of some of the things we have to talk about is for any next steps that we do recommend, where should those recommendations go? And a lot of my opinion is to the planning board and planning department, because that is really where those changes
Decisions get made.
yes, should and do get made.
Because you want them to recommend to
The council.
the council.
And
Yeah.
recommend
Them to
with
be on board.
language that's been worked up by the planning department that's ready to vote on.
Yes.
We've,
So with regards to that, it's reported to council. Do you want us to look individually at the items to recommend them? Or can we just recommend the package? I mean,
I'll give you my thoughts.
Yeah.
that's fine.
Which are, there's some of this that is near term that maybe we could get done by the end of the year through council and through planning board and council, and there's some that's more master plan. And I was talking with Peter, and Peter, we realized if we wanted to get anything voted by the council this term, this probably is the last meeting to make a recommendation. So,
Last meeting for us.
for us.
Yes. Based on the schedule of meetings
Right.
and anything that would need three readings and public hearings.
And through planning
And
board.
through
Yeah.
planning
No,
board.
understood.
So I would pitch that we look at the gateway zoning for Heritage Constitution, because I think that's pretty straightforward. It's just an extension of what Beth's Land Use Committee did in the past. Wouldn't take much work from the planning board. And the other one is putting parking into site plan.
So should you make a motion to refer those individual items one at a time?
If we could drag somebody off the street
If
to
we
get
had a quorum.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yes,
just,
but yes, I would say, John, instead of sending the whole packet of the update that we gave the council, to pick 2 items on, I would recommend those 2 items because they, oh, Tracy's here. Woo!
Yay!
We have a quorum.
you've never been greeted so
Sorry.
warmly.
We all just got really
Yes.
excited.
In
Hi,
then,
everybody.
hello, Tracy.
Hello.
Sorry I'm late. I'm on the road driving, but I have you on speaker so I can listen and participate. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Be safe.
And if we say something nice, you can beep the horn.
That's right.
I also think what would be nice, and not at this meeting, but maybe our next meeting, is, as we had that giant rubric that we made, Howard in the beginning, kind of going through that, and then maybe setting some ideas up for the next cycle so that we can present that to the city council. And to the city manager's office so that can be presented to the next council.
And
So-
a year-end report.
Yeah, and a year-end report and a recommendation of, hey, if you decide to continue, we would recommend that the next council vote to continue this committee. Here are the things that we would recommend the next committee, whether it be the current makeup or a different makeup, start to tackle, i.e. really looking at some of the things we haven't been able to get into, like the first-time home buyers assistance program, really getting in that with legal and, the bank that deals with that and some of those things that can be really attacked in the new year, and kind of like, the other side of the housing, which is not just building it, but trying to make it affordable for people who want to purchase first-time homes and things like that. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So at this point, do we want to have that discussion so that Tracy can hear what we were talking about before she came on, and then maybe get a motion?
Yeah, so I think that what we can do is if we roll back to the agenda, we can approve the minutes and then in the next item is the zoning recommendations.
Perfect.
Yes.
I hate to be a party
Oh,
pooper.
can she not?
Well, yeah, I think,
This
Because we have to have an in-person.
Which one's gonna be a party pooper?
Oh, we have to have in-person
Quorum for them to be able to vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we still have to wait to see if Dakin shows up.
Oh,
I have a discussion around the minutes. I
yeah.
think that I did only look at it on my phone, but I think it had everybody attending. I know I was not here.
Said absent press, because I saw that too.
Oh, did it say
Yeah,
absent?
I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, but it did.
Yes,
Okay, I was just-
absent.
See
I saw that
Me,
too. Okay.
you,
I was like, oh.
Mary, Megan.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
All right,
Thank
sorry.
you. Yes.
Same thought.
Okay, so it's okay.
I feel like it's been forever since I've seen other one.
Yeah, wow.
Yes.
Summer.
I said it was, if you had them,
you have to do roll call votes with someone participating. Right.
Well,
Yes.
But I think you also need a physical.
If there's an
quorum.
emergency or some compelling reason, you can do a remote.
can't we just suspend the rules and vote to
state
make
law,
her a voting
No.
member?
state
No.
law.
No, it's in person majority to be able to vote
Try.
on.
I'm trying to find a way around that, you
I
people.
don't, I don't
We
wanna.
could do a straw vote.
Sounded like a lawyer.
Trying to think of a way
Well,
around it.
I have a discussion point on what
Yes.
you were just talking about, which is the Heritage Constitution Ave
Yeah.
rezoning. So how does the new House bill that passed, which allows residential in commercial zones?
Commercial but not industrial, and most of those
Okay,
are
so
industrial.
these are industrial and that's why it's different. How is Portsmouth handling that in commercial zones?
Well, we've met with legal and we need to,
We have actually very few commercial zones.
so it would be,
Most of ours are already
would be
mixed
office
use.
research, waterfront business, and general business.
And I think there's one other commercial zone.
It's residential office.
That has residential.
That has residential already. Right.
It just needs mixed use in it, which most of our zones do.
Yes.
Right. But it's kind of vague, and so we need to kind of drill down more into it because there's some districts that are mixed use that don't, because there's no cap. It just says you must allow multifamily residential.
That's how I
And
understood.
so we
was the
have some
cities.
districts that only allow like 3 to 4 units or up to 5 to 8 and not.
You have to
so-
have infrastructure too.
You have to have infrastructure, but does that mean now that we have to allow any, no cap?
If they can meet the other requirements.
If they can meet the other requirements, and so we're working with legal to.
Well, but I guess New Hampshire had a vague bill passed.
Well, how I understood it was that towns just had to allow it. They could put their own, or cities and towns could put their own guardrails around it.
That's one interpretation for sure.
If you were in our meeting last night, Newington claimed it was completely and utterly against them.
Yes.
That they were the target
They
of
should.
White.
Um,
That's what the two people from Newington said last night.
Yeah, and I'm sure people feel that same way in Bradford or in some of these
so
other
all of this
smaller-
color is industrial. So when you're looking at Constitution and Heritage, those are all
that's
industrial.
why you guys focused on industrial, where there is
Yes.
space to do.
And that way we could make it so
Okay.
that you can
And there
actually-
has been conversations in the past, I don't think in the immediate recent, but in the past, from some of those property owners and businesses out there with the idea that they would like to add housing onto their property. So I think it's always nice, and two, as we talk about, some of the, we're not seeing, at least in my opinion, and I would defer to the planning and planning board representative or member, whatever. We're not seeing right now as much push and development down in that area. The way we did a couple years ago with the gateway. We're seeing a lot of coming in front of the boards, like redevelopment of some downtown units, but we're not seeing the push we saw like 5 years ago with the change of the Sages and Green and all of that. So really trying to revitalize, hey, we have this whole other segment of town, like let's start pushing some housing down here too, that has infrastructure, that has, that can easily tie in and.
Yeah,
And like-
it has residential around it.
Yeah.
Like, what was it, 8 or 10 years ago, the post office sectional center out on
Yes.
Constitution came up for sale. It could only be industrial. Right, those buildings will come up for sale again. When they do, they have the option to be residential, or multi-unit.
Should we be looking at West Road too?
Yeah.
Look at all that purple. All that purple is industrial.
That's true.
Oh, see, he's gonna bring it up to you.
Where's West
But you also
This is
have
West
a-
Road
also
right
have an
here.
outlet
Goes runs
fee
between
for
Market Basket,
industrial
right?
use.
It's the
Right.
right back
Yeah.
That's how you get out of
Yeah.
community campus.
It is one of the ways. Well, you can also come all the way down, right? Community
Who's the
campus
serious-
is here.
can't
You can go
turn-
that.
You just can't turn.
You have to
back
turn
towards
right.
town.
The asphalt.
If you want it, you have to go there.
Yes.
But all of that is
Here's West
industrial,
Road.
all along Banfield.
Yeah, the thing about West Road, not that I'm disagreeing with you, but it's
Yeah,
pretty
right.
built up
Yeah.
versus I like Heritage and because there is some open space.
See, the beauty of Gateway though, still allows all of those
All of
uses.
it. Yeah,
for
In
the most part.
Constitution, I mean, obviously we have the giant land owned by Water Country.
Okay, well, I was thinking water country, yeah.
Water Country, I already changed it.
Already.
It's already Gateway. I did that the last swap, the
Where's
last
Water
expansion.
Do we think they're ever gonna
It's
change
that
their?
big where the hand is right there. So this whole thing?
Or your hand, that hand.
Yeah.
That's that whole
Yeah.
red is.
Yeah, that whole red and that whole L.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a much larger.
What's all vacant
That's
is
for
this.
Water Country is
Yeah.
62 acres.
Yeah. What's all vacant is this whole part.
Yeah.
That has nothing on it. That's woods.
the Disney.
That's their
Parking.
parking.
And they're just banking land sitting on it.
Okay,
We need a tax for best and highest use.
so let's go, we need to do minutes.
Well, we can't vote.
We need to wait for
Oh, that's
another
right,
person to
wait,
show up.
okay.
Yes. So this is
Why we're
just
talking.
as discussion.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
And then in the other so there's that, and then another point for discussion is the RSA 79-E, which came up a lot during our discussion with developers of, hey, you know, what could you do, what would you do?
Yeah.
And you know, actually, I would say like Eric Chinberg really was
He's used it a lot.
championing that, and he's used it a lot in Rochester.
Summersburg.
Summers, yeah. So you know, that was something to talk about. If that made sense to introduce to the planning board in the concept. At
Is
least.
that who would make
Yeah.
that decision? Because
No,
it's
it's
a
the council.
council.
It's a
But I think
council
that like, for me, I like to just get all sides to weigh in on any.
I don't know.
If they don't need to weigh in.
Well, one of the things that the new 79E has done is opened it for office conversions. And I do think that's something that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Well,
But so does our co-living for office.
we dumped you with a lot of reading about that, but if you were
There
able
was a lot.
to slug through it, it's very flexible, right?
They've expanded it over the years, so it's changed. That's why it's hard to really understand. That's why it has to be so many pages, right? To just try to understand all the different facets. Because when I first looked at it, I thought it was all renovations of rundown buildings only.
That's what it had been.
Yeah.
That's how it started. That was what I understood it to be, which is why I asked for more information.
We were talking about some use cases.
I like the fact you can do it with historic buildings and with water.
Coastal resilience.
Coastal
Thank you,
resiliency.
thank you.
There's a
I
lot
couldn't come up, I'm like, the water part, you know?
Yeah, I think Hampton's looking at that too. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to them.
But you know, we were thinking about the buildings where WSCA and Liars Bench are,
Yeah.
you know, could you incentivize those to be housing? It looks to me like you could under this. If we'd had something like 79E when Christmas tree shops came in, you could have made that
We should have had it when those brewery buildings were all done. Yeah.
housing opportunity.
That would have been, that's what I learned about it, was right after those buildings were finished. And I thought, oh, that was a great opportunity to use that there.
You know, Marona Road, someday Ben's Auto Body might sell, you know,
Yeah.
what could that be? So I think it's got a lot of flexibility. It's tricky to know what the next steps are because you obviously send it to the council, they approve it, but there's a fair amount of customizing that you do for your city and your town, which might, we may need to get some minds around that.
I think the planning department and the legal department are probably the
Yeah.
first two that need to, what could we work with?
Yeah.
What weigh in as far as what might actually make sense for the city.
And it's just adopting an ordinance, and then each project would have to apply for
Yes.
the benefit.
Yep.
So I think that's, yeah.
We basically just designate zones.
And it can be by building, which is
Oh,
different than a TIF,
Oh.
which is an area.
So
This
you
was
can
all
sort
very-
of spot zone it.
Well, it's, do you,
Probably not just
Well,
one building.
But the application is by
do
building,
you
right?
designate the zone by building, or you can designate a wide swath
I
of
think you
area
can
and
do
then they
either.
could apply by building?
Yeah, like if you have an
Like a
area
TIF,
that
you just
has,
do an area, but on this, you can actually do buildings, is
You
what they
could-
said.
yeah, so like if you went back in the past to when the brewery buildings weren't redone, and you said we wanna incentivize people to redo these.
These empty,
Particular buildings.
Yes. Problem we have is that, we don't have too many.
We're running out of
buildings
those.
in there.
which is where I got into when I was thinking about it 3 years ago. I was like, but where are we run down enough that this makes sense to put it in? So, but with the historic buildings, I mean, it might make sense for some of the outside the historic district if there are historic buildings that might wanna be part of that or get the benefit of it, it might be worth it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just for housing either. I think it was started,
No,
it was
it's-
just for
yeah.
rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation.
And so
Rehabilitation.
housing is a newer piece, I think.
Yeah, cause it was about revitalization of downtown and villages and districts, right? That's what it was all about, which is why it's worked so well in Rochester.
Manchester's also done a lot.
A lot, yeah. Did you have any further conversation and look at any ways that we could put it to use?
The only one that I thought might, from my perspective anyway, seems like it makes sense is the coastal resilience zones. Not that the other ones don't, I just hadn't come up with any great ideas about where to do it. I think it is something we gotta dig a little deeper and see where it would work, but I can't think of buildings that are,
Could you tie it to an affordability component?
it looks like where they did it, at least I didn't read this as thoroughly as I could have, but it looks like they put a workforce housing component in it, and they get a reduction in the tax
Right, basically for so many years, you keep the value.
years. They only went, for the value, they got the reduction in taxes, they
Right.
kept it as workforce, then that went away.
Right,
So like a 20-year workforce.
right, so basically the value of, the tax assessed value of the property doesn't change after you renovate it for a period of time. But during that period of time, you give back workforce housing. That's how I understood it when I was
Yeah.
looking into
And it
this.
looked like
Because-
if you did different, multiple things, you could add on years, like
Right.
Yes.
if it was
There's a way
historic
to add on.
preservation, you could add on, if you had affordable housing, you could add on.
To me, that what you just described should apply anywhere. Like, wouldn't we want to incentivize that anywhere in the city?
You might be able to. That's what you'd look at, yeah.
My original reading of it was for downtowns in like certain districts. That's why I wasn't entirely sure if we could or couldn't. But I think they've expanded it. When I was reading one of the
Yeah.
charts, it looked like it had expanded so that you could use it almost anywhere now. And it didn't have to be a true downtown designated kind of area.
And the latest addition, the housing opportunity zones,
Right,
that can be
that's
anywhere.
new.
That can be anywhere. And that was a straight, we'll give you tax relief for 10 years if you give us 30% below market as part of your project.
I think we should definitely look at where.
That seems like a no-brainer.
So, I mean, maybe you just recommend the council to, look into creating a 70-90 district, and then they can designate to legal and staff to.
To
Yeah.
review
We're
what
back
what makes the most sense.
Jane.
Put the 88-page report in the packet.
Yeah.
But it does, to me, it does make sense. I mean, especially as you look through like the communities, in that table with the communities that have done it, right? You've seen a lot in Manchester and Rochester. You've seen like you know,
It makes a big difference when we look at a pro forma.
Yeah.
To have that kind of incentive, and I don't think, because of the way you're talking about it, it doesn't negatively impact the tax rolls.
No, they just don't change for a period of time.
It's just a
But
delay.
then, if
Then they
do,
do,
and they do.
exactly.
And so you're using that initial tax break to let the project get profitable faster.
This is Tracy. I just want to chime in to say how much I support that. I think it's a great idea, and I can tell you from way back when I was on the HDC, we tried to get some traction on this, and it didn't work. But it's a great thing that can help protect our historic buildings, which are beyond the district, as was mentioned, and it can help build those kind of satellite community hubs that we've talked about. So I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see it happen.
Okay.
So maybe within that, it's kind of, we look for a potential, like a small look at some of the inventory of like kind of places like Tracy were talking about, and historic things outside of the historic.
Use cases.
Yeah, there, I mean, I'm thinking of one building that's ready to, probably should be torn down because it's been so neglected, but like the old schoolhouse restaurant, right? If that was truly a historic
of
building that
HomeSense.
had been, right, it would have possibly been something that
easy
could
to
have been.
furnish your place.
Blast from the
It is a blast from the past, but I was saying, that just comes to mind, right, as a rundown building in the city that
Yeah.
somebody would like somebody to go to. Could that be revitalized under a historic? It's not on the National Register, and I think that was one of the keys, but, I just using that as an example, it could be, and that could be useful for that, so,
Yes,
just a thought.
good thought.
And it's good to know that the HDC was looking at this a while ago too, so it,
But the new changes that were passed this past year or within the last 12 months definitely expanded in a good way.
Which I think is good. I think we definitely need to consider it.
Right.
And I also like the idea of the industrial zones and 79E. What else do we have on that list? I like both of those.
Well, we had RKG coming back to us with ways to fix our incentives, our
Disincentives.
Oh, because they're coming back with a full written report,
yeah,
right?
they're coming full back with the
Full written report.
right stuff.
Yeah, because we've got something that's borderline not economic. We also had dimensional requirements.
The density.
Density.
I'm looking at our whole SRA, SRB, GRC, GRB, GRA. We've got to narrow that down.
Yeah.
We need to narrow that down.
Well, like,
There should
again,
be one single family,
I
one
decided-
single residence, and 2 GRs, no more. I say we get rid of 2 districts.
and I always say, like, I'm beating a dead horse where I'm like, density that doesn't hurt, right? Like density, like figuring out, again, as we look at expanding areas, promoting, like density that doesn't.
Everyone can have an ADU now.
Yeah.
Well, and if you,
We can't stop them. By right.
the dimensional requirements really help if something's torn down and you rebuild.
Yeah.
You could get a duplex or where you had a single, and that's really hard right now. But I do think one of the easiest ways is just allow some of these older houses to be turned into multiple units.
older, I think all house, but like, it doesn't have to just be older, it could be like a house built in the 90s in the Woodlands, that's 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't that be?
Co-living.
And if you make it, if the look of it doesn't change,
But even if it does, that's okay too.
but I think that would be impossible to do by the end of the
The
year.
problem with the Woodlands is it's an HOA.
Yes,
You
that, I was thinking.
That's the problem. I'm thinking.
Yes, my example was just more McMansion.
But we talked about this in the beginning, when you look through, when you drive down, like Union is on one side of it is a huge amount of duplexes. I mean, we talk about co-living now. I lived in a half a Victorian and we had 6 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and whoever moved in, you just paid the other person the security deposit and made sure the rent kept going. But the other side is all larger single families. So could we incentivize replicating that, right?
And all those Cabot, Austin, all those streets have multiple units now.
Yeah. And one can be, one is already done, and right now if someone next to them decided to do it, they wouldn't be able to.
This is interesting though, building existing on January 1st, 1980.
Right, so
Yes.
that's aside from the dimensional stuff, this was the other thing that may be more attainable now,
Changing that.
is allowing, expanding this to other districts. Because the thing with this is you can't do it through an addition. You can't change anything about the existing house
It's
except
truly a conversion.
except
Just a
for
conversion.
egress or ingress. So you couldn't put like a big addition on and then add 2 units. It's in the existing footprint. And I think you have to conform the building coverage and open space and parking. But
So you don't necessarily change the character of the
Right.
neighborhood.
You don't have to have minimum required lot area per dwelling
so,
unit. So
well,
that's
yeah,
nice.
it lowers it. So if we go to this section, 10.812, so that section allows houses existing on
Buildings.
buildings, 1980.
Yeah.
So the conversion shall not include any change to the exterior of the building except for minimum egress. Lots shall comply with open space and coverage and parking. And then you can lower the lot area per dwelling unit.
Is
Just get rid of that.
the not changing the exterior of the building more because this was intended for historic buildings and it was about keeping like from a historic perspective? So is it as relevant if we're renovating a building from the 90s?
I think it might be character.
Yeah. I think it's character and then not, because then if you didn't have that, someone could put a big addition on
Yeah.
and double the size of the house and then that would change the character essentially.
And it's kind of self-limiting.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
only put so many units
Right.
in, make it work.
So the question would be is if we expanded it to, go back to that. Other districts, what would I guess we'd look at the percentage of what the existing lot area per dwelling unit requirement is and then what it goes to.
It makes me dizzy if I
I
watch
know, there's too many
scroll
charts.
like that too much. Okay, I have to wait till he stops.
Shrink down these
I
charts.
am like starting to get
I'm just
dizzy.
listening, I'm not looking.
Yeah, stop. I just my ears.
So if we expanded it to, if you wanted to expand it to any of these, which SRA, SRB, or rural, how many could, maybe just going to 2 for some of these, or 3, and making 2 by right, and if you wanted to go higher, it could be a special exception, but.
You could do special, or you could probably even come up with a condition.
But I think the date was based off of when this property was originally put in.
Yeah.
So maybe you would want to change
Right.
that date to
That's
now
also-
being current.
Or
Right.
just, I would just say
Just not have a date.
not
Not
have a
have a
date.
date.
Yeah, can we
Also-
write down those recommendations? I think those changes would be.
Just an
What?
existing building.
What I'm having trouble following where this is the N a no.
No, N is no.
And
Okay.
is not permitted.
At the top it
And
says.
not permitted, P permitted.
And
S
That's
is,
a special exception.
which goes to the zoning board.
okay, so
And then
these are
CU is conditional use permit for planning.
So if they have an N, it means they're not permitted. The only way you can do it is to go to the ZBA and get a variance.
okay.
But it's a lower bar than a variance, or an N.
Special exception
It's a lower bar.
is a lower bar than getting a variance from a not permitted use.
Was this done to prioritize specific neighborhoods? Yeah. No.
I don't know, I just think,
No.
I don't think Peter was alive when I was done, so.
But like with it,
I wasn't,
I was 4,
Exactly.
when was this
so I
done?
didn't have much in
Well,
it.
it's talking about buildings as of 1980, so
I
I'm
wasn't
thinking
alive.
1980.
Wasn't alive.
I know, I'm like, there's a lot of people in this room that weren't alive when this
Negative
was
8
done.
years. But I think those could be two recommendations that we talk about, whether that's completely getting rid of the date,
Yep,
because it's kind of
Toss
null
that out.
null and void, and then changing these to allowed, and then
Right, changing these, you could change some of these S's to
To-
permitted.
to
Permitted and
yeah.
not permitted to special exception if you really
well,
wanted
yeah,
to.
I would say I'd say 1.61 should be permitted up to 2, and then you could do 1.62 as special as
I think special exception.
yes, because as you said, those are a lower threshold.
It's a lower bar.
yeah, you want SRA, SRB,
And so
GRA.
If you go on
Rural
the
a
top
little
sheet,
tricky,
that's where it gives you.
rural is 5
Should
acre.
have went
Yeah.
there.
I mean, 5
Why
acre.
do we still have that?
do we have that?
I know, do we have any rural that actually still exists?
Like the old
Little
Sherburne
Harbor
Farm
Road.
is one, Pebbly Hill is one, the house left.
But most
is
of
a
those are
state
all now in
forest.
conservation, right?
Yeah.
So
A lot of it's in
But
This
country.
is-
there's also off of Little Harbor Road,
Yeah, Martine
Martin
Cottage.
Yeah.
Cottage.
yeah, that's all
Yeah.
rural.
That's a big chunk.
Holy moly.
And then SRA is, I mean, yeah, SRA is 1 acre zoning,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
SRB is 15,000 square feet.
I
So
think we need to get rid of 1 acre
I-
zoning.
Yeah.
I just don't think we need it
Open up
anywhere
a
in our
lot of
single
housing.
family neighborhoods.
So would that be a recommendation that we would send to the planning board to just get rid of 1
You
acre?
could send it right to the planning board. If you send it to the council, they'd have to send it to the planning board anyway,
Okay.
so you might as well send it right to the planning.
So then I mean, we can't make a motion, but I would add that to the list of things that we should just get rid of.
If somebody shows up, we're gonna have a lot of motions we're gonna have to
Yeah.
go through.
That we would just send it to the planning board to remove the 1 acre lot.
Or right, I mean,
So we're keeping rural we're keeping the few places that are rural, and then we're just getting, I mean, how many in reality neighborhoods like,
Over the acreage on them.
Yeah, but the other thing too is that, you know, the planning board can't get rid of these things. There's a process in place.
no, they have to make recommendations to city council.
council, yes, but
And they have to have a public hearing.
They have,
Council does.
actually,
council does.
planning board does not have to
That's
have
true,
a
that's
public
right, they
hearing.
don't, yeah.
And they started not having public hearings.
Yeah.
We do it all in public, but there's not a hearing,
Yeah.
so we don't have to,
But there would be hearings
unless
to
we
the
waive our
council.
rules.
But they do take public comment usually.
Yes, yeah, but there would be public hearing
There's no one in the room to speak.
if this got if
We
we
sent it
sent
to
this
them.
to planning board and then they agreed with us, then they sent it to council, then there would be 3.
Well, so we have 1 acre lots on SRA, and SRB is 15,000 square feet.
So it's a big,
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's what, 42,000 square feet to 15,000 square feet. It doesn't even make any sense to me.
So why have 1 acre?
Why have 1 acre? I mean, it should be maybe,
Combine them to SRB.
you just make it all
I'd say
SRB.
just combine it to the SRA.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
We'll
it's
come up
not
with
gonna
another
change.
There's
number.
only 292 parcels that are actually,
What, can you tell
in
me
that.
what color SRA is?
So this is SRA, this light
Light.
tan,
Okay.
and then the yellow is SRB.
SRB.
And it's,
So this is Ellen Park here.
SRB is the 15,000
Yep.
square feet, SRA is 1 acre.
1 acre. So Elm
So-
Park is all 1 acre.
Holy moly.
This is Ocean Road.
But those lots are not 1 acre.
No,
No.
they're all not.
This is why on this list,
They're all non-conforming.
for the record, non-conforming parcels in SRA are 100. So we're at 34%. SRB, there it's 1,630, so 63.7%
Yeah.
of SRB does not meet 15,000 square feet.
So shouldn't we try to make it?
We should just get rid of it. Just combine it with
them? Yeah, well,
I say combine them.
or combine them. But I mean, when you have over, I think,
half, yeah.
not even over half, if you have over 25% looking at non-conforming, then that just means you have to
That's
look back.
Joe,
Yeah.
that's all of them.
I know
It
it
is. It is. I mean, if you look at the percentage of non-conforming,
It's 50,
54, 37, 42, 34, 63.
Okay.
And I'm just rounding.
Oh, yeah.
Down.
And basically, all that means is most of those were done before
Right.
zoning
So
came
even
into
rural at 5 acres has 45 total parcels and 19 of them are non-conforming. That's almost half.
Can we get rid
But
of
just
rural?
because it's there's a
Turn
high,
that to SRA.
just because there's a high percentage of non-conforming, that doesn't mean it's not good zoning.
I don't disagree with you, but I think we need to look at it because there's
Fine.
there's a lot of nonconformity and there's 6 districts.
But if we
When
can,
I think you could get away with 3.
yeah, so if we combined those two, if we made a recommendation to combine them.
Small, medium, large.
Turn
Yeah.
SR.
We need 3, small, medium, and large.
Bronze, silver, gold.
I like that. I just don't think we need 6.
I think that's a good recommendation to send to.
I think it'll also simplify a lot of things.
Where's the pinch, right? If you tear something down, you pretty much need a variance
Rebuild.
If your lot's non-conforming.
It's not
if
conforming.
it's non-conforming. So
Maybe a pool becomes
that's a huge barrier.
Single family becomes 15,000 square feet.
So if that's the pinch point, how do you ease it?
What is this red now?
Gateway.
Oh, the gateway.
Red is gateway.
That's-
Gateway 1, orange is gateway 2.
Now, so my question, never mind, go ahead.
Gray is an airport. And peace.
Ignore me, please. I like the big ignore.
So that
What's green?
the red outline is
Municipal. Those are all municipal owned properties.
That's, light green is municipal,
Well,
dark green is
parks-
NRP.
Parks are all considered municipal owned properties, right?
A lot of it is CDF.
No, but the land that's closest to Peace is
Unbuilt.
super weird.
Oh, that's,
That's
yeah.
NRP.
And that's,
That's not, yeah, that's,
and then to the
That's
left
a
is
whole
the
other
only
cause-
federally subsidized golf course in
it's
America.
resource protection land. That's what you see in that,
Yeah.
that's what you see in the outside of
Are you
Peace.
talking about this
The
one?
olive green.
I'm
Olive
talking about
green.
that teeny tiny square.
That one.
That's city.
That's city land.
That's a
Yep,
park.
that's city owned land.
We need lasers in here.
So, right, what that triangle
Yeah.
is your park, right?
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah.
I always love to find a city-owned plot somewhere you don't expect, you know?
Yeah.
And just
Trust me,
like,
there's a lot of them.
start a garden.
Sorry, you know, like a median somewhere. You're like, oh, okay.
I was saying that we need to, in trees and greeneries, I was bringing up revitalizing the Adopt a Spot program.
And for the record, the light orange, or there's 2 different kinds of orange. There's a bright orange, which is the
color.
gateway.
Yeah, light orange.
The other one is garden apartment mobile home.
Oh, yeah. it's just-
Oh, over on
Yeah,
Middle?
It's the gold.
there is a lot of garden apartment mobile home.
just to recapitulate.
Bring it back.
See how
Sorry.
there's sort of
Yeah.
muted and not.
So we had all those restrictions on
Yep.
pre-1980 houses. Remove the date, remove the table of square feet per unit so that you can add more
Underneath
units.
the map.
And then expand it to the other residential zones. That's 10.812. And that's those older houses, getting more density in those older
So
houses.
taking out the date, say it again while I'm looking at it, because I didn't catch the rest of it.
Removing the date.
Remove the pre-1980 requirement.
Yep.
Then remove the square feet per unit requirement, so that if, you turn 1 into 2 or 1 into 3 or 1 into 4, you don't have those square feet per unit. That
So,
was a
Do we
table.
need to do that if we
well,
just?
so if you put allowances here,
Yep.
you would want to look at this section and figure out, because, so for example, GRA, GRB, GRA is 7,500 per dwelling unit and GRB is 5,000. And then so it allows it to go down to, close your eyes, everybody.
I just did. I'm like,
This discussion is
10.812.
It's all good, but the monkey wrench is, you said that if we wanted any of this stuff done by the end of the year, we have to do it tonight, and we don't have a quorum.
yeah, well, we're hoping that maybe Dagan will be here.
Dagon.
If Dagan shows up before we leave, then we get to.
Oh, is that what we're doing,
Motions.
we're just killing time?
No,
We're talking about it.
And I think what can happen is that we could, if we get something today, we could try to call a special meeting of the committee. We could send out a poll and say, can anyone meet before the 24th, which is our next city council meeting, which is a Wednesday, so that actually gives us a little bit more
We're
time.
not allowed to have public meetings before sunset that day, remember?
Yes.
Because of the
You can meet
holiday.
next week.
No, but if you
We
wanted
can meet next
anything in the
week. Oh.
packet, you'd need it by Wednesday.
Just
She
trying
said the
to-
24th, and I know that's our meeting
Understand
night.
the
We
logistics.
moved our meeting because of Jewish holiday.
So this is the part that,
It's not a good.
this is the part we
So,
take out.
right, or you would add SRB to this and have a reduced
Right.
lot area per dwelling requirement. Because so GRA goes from normally 7,500, and if you qualify under this section, you go down to 3,000.
So you
And
could
we
put in
technically-
SRB and qualify down to
7,500 or something. Or what,
7,500.
that would be half. GRC is 3,000, and if under here it goes down to 1,000. And I think MRO and MRB are 7,500 normally, but then they go down to 1,500 per dwelling unit.
Why we have MRO and MRB is just ridiculous.
I don't know, there's
Those need
like
to go.
5 properties
Need to-
each maybe.
We need, this is why we need to look at what is left in those and what are they closer to and how can we.
Well, maybe it sounds like we need to react to the
No!
do it in your own time,
Or master plan.
or master plan. Which,
Do it through the
which
master
also
plan. I
like
already have to do that.
we can, beside, some of these bigger things can be
Certainly.
recommendations from this committee to the master plan,
Process.
yes,
Public meeting on Monday.
on Monday, in the Levinson
Are you
room.
guys free Monday? Please come.
Jen's not. I understand that.
It'll be food.
It's an open house
Is there
for the master
babysitting?
plan.
I might be interested if
It's
there's
the library,
babysitting.
the library, you can bring them into the kids' part.
We did try.
It's at the library, so you can just,
Just
you can
set them up with a book, they'll be fine.
I really like the
You can't bring
iPad.
someone over from the
Alright, set them up on an iPad.
I'll babysit.
You can bring the kids, they can give their.
Lunches in charge.
Well, that,
Go to that
Probably
side.
could get some of our
have you
staff to
got
help.
some
I bet,
handle on that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, get rid of the 1980 requirement, move it into the other zones.
And yet, you don't have to figure out what this could be. You could just say, hey, planning board, add SRB and rural
and figure out what the
Okay.
appropriate.
to this
square footage
section and remove the date and figure out what the proper
Yep.
density should be.
Yeah, where that's where I think like this, it's not our job to
You don't have to figure it all out.
We just have to say what we think we should look at.
Okay. I think, this came out of random conversation, so I love conversation.
No, that's good. We did some good thinking on that. And then the bigger question is best question of, can we streamline these into 3 zones instead of 6 or whatever?
I think we seriously, and that might be more of a recommendation to the master planning
Master
process.
planning,
Yes.
And that's what I said the first time, but I'm not gonna stop saying it until it actually happens.
In John, just my opinion, this is my sole opinion, is that if we can get something to the council and voted on before the end of the term, that's great. But my hope would be that if this committee puts recommendations forward and, it's given the thumbs up by whatever needs to go to planning and whatever needs to go to the council, that whoever's on the next council ideally would not throw out the work. They would understand that, this is an active body of residents and could keep that good work going. So ideally, we would have a quorum here, vote it, send it. Where we don't have that, we can try to make sure that we have, whether it's before next week or the week after. We do have 5 council meetings after next, so I just counted them.
Oh, I'd have to.
I think one of the important things is what was mentioned earlier, is that we need to make sure that we have adequate time before the end of the year to do a year-end report.
Yeah.
I don't want to see us, I agree with you, Joe, and the fact is, I think that a lot of good work has been done, and I think that we need to reduce that to some sort of a document going forward. And one of the problems we have is that if you think of it, we have 3 more meetings before the end of the year. And that last meeting, I would think we would spend the majority of it putting together this, that's one of the other things too. If you put together the document at that meeting, when do you get a chance to vote to move it forward, or whatever the process is good, let's think about what we want to end up with and how do we take the steps to get there. And I'm a little concerned when we're not getting there.
Yeah.
Including every meeting, there's 6 if you include the second one in September.
Okay, that's what I
Because there's 1 in September, 1 in November, 2 in October, and 2 in December.
Yeah.
But the last meeting's kind of useless in December.
Yes.
It's all about holiday music.
The one in November is usually packed.
It's usually packed.
Yeah.
So that's my,
Yes.
we would pretty much have to have something by the end of October to city council.
That's what I'm thinking.
Should we have as a task for the next meeting?
To have everyone come.
Or have, yes, and to look at,
Yeah, I think if we can get a
Share.
synopsis of the things that we talked about that we'd like to present.
Yeah.
And then on that next one, we can type up a list of our 2-year term summary. Does that feel, is that what you're saying?
yeah, or just come prepared, like with your bullet points for it.
Yeah,
That way
yes.
we are prepared.
Yeah, so
Versus
we're
starting
on the
from
screen,
scratch.
live typing,
Yeah.
Yeah,
getting it together.
Or even a draft.
Yeah.
So our next meeting is October 9th.
Yeah.
And the second October city council meeting is the 20th. So there would be time to get something on the agenda for
Yeah.
city council after that meeting, based off of the calendar I'm looking at.
is
The
that,
problem is if something has to go to planning board meets on the 16th, which would not be enough time for it to go to planning board and then back to city council for October.
Well, could we do the gateway zoning change and parking in site review for?
Parking and site review can go to planning board. That's gonna take longer than the end of the year. We're not gonna be able to do that quickly.
Here's my question, is that because, and this may be a legal inquiry that we will clear up. Because we do not have a voting consensus or whatever cohort tonight, could some of these things that we are looking to send off to the planning board just be put under councilors' names?
Yeah, with no action by the committee.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, the council,
Any one of us could put
any
it
of you
under our
can
name
put
and
it
bring it
under,
forward.
anything under your
Yeah, if we
name.
had a straw vote consensus,
It doesn't have to come from this committee.
it doesn't
Doesn't
have,
have to come from a vote of this committee.
correct, so
That's
then
right.
it does allow us to put it
Does allow you.
on,
Move it forward.
For
to
the
move it
24th.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the, with the proviso that the committee did not vote, but that doesn't mean,
We didn't vote because we,
A work group.
There's a
of the committee
consensus of that.
exactly,
Came together
Right.
with these
You-
recommendations.
the working group.
It's how I
came
moved
together.
everything from land use forward.
Yeah, we did the working groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a quorum,
Good
it's
point.
just not.
And in
Or
it's
person.
just not a legal phone call.
But we have the working group that has been working together and we can move it forward that way so that we can get it on
Good point, very good point.
the agenda.
Okay.
Okay,
You
great.
do that.
I like keeping nothing under my name. It makes it real smooth. The
Well, I
vote
hate to
not
break
to
it
go
to you.
past 10:30.
Joe, you don't want anything under your name when it gets close to election time.
Listen, John, you know me. I don't live my life based on elections. So I'm a jam. I stay pretty consistent. I try to.
Yeah, well,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
and when they changed the date, that knocked me out of being able to attend.
Oh, the 24th. Yes.
So.
Yes.
it had to
Oh,
be-
because for Rosh Hashanah.
So what you're saying is you're putting it all on Joe and I?
Woo!
I can draft something.
That'd be
You
nice.
draft- that'd be
You draft
helpful.
something, John. You draft them way better than me.
We're gonna make you do the work and then we'll just talk about
Okay,
it.
well, so that,
That's good division.
so looping back that, again, we'll talk about it from the working group, that we didn't have an in-person quorum, but the members that were there in person had agreed and supported and consensus on this. And then we'll put it under our name
So the-
on the agenda so that we can get it
Now-
going.
Just so we're
Yes.
clear, what are we agreeing on? What are you gonna put under your
removing
name?
the date requirement, removing the square footage per unit.
And the industrial, changing the industrial as well.
And 79E.
And
So
79.
the
And
three,
streamlining
the
zones.
three things that were on the agenda, or the two of them were on the agenda, so the 79E, bringing that forward.
Yeah.
The change that we just discussed, and then the expansion of Gateway, or,
The list of
Get it.
parcels.
On
on
Gateway. Heritage and Constitution that are industrial.
yes, those three, that's it.
Perfect.
No sneakies, John.
Just everything we've been talking about. And John wrote it all down, we hope it.
And Miss Peter did.
I mean-
Just to explore what we can do with.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, some of this, right, isn't going to be going to planning board. Some of this is gonna be
Yeah,
asking staff
yes.
to do.
Staff and legal.
The 79 is the ask
And I,
Or city manager,
city manager and
City
legal for opinion on,
she'll rope us in.
Are those days?
yes.
right,
I feel like Jane knows this is coming, cause she knows.
Okay.
Okay, and then
because if we're talking, you had parking on that too, right? Because I think that really has to go to planning
parking,
board.
okay, so then parking
Because
site roof.
That's already started, hasn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Planning board's talked about it, we just have, I think we need the push.
Okay. So then
This will be the
so then we're at the 4
I
items.
think if we give it the push,
Then that'll be helpful.
come up.
Tracy, does that sound okay to you?
Beep, beep.
Did we lose her? Nope, she's still there, she's just muted.
Oh, that's okay.
Just keep driving safe.
Yeah. Yell if you don't like it.
Yeah, yell if we do anything you don't like.
And then so
Can you hear me?
yes.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
All right.
Wonderful. We're all consensus. And then so then at our next meeting, we will start working on we'll email and ask everyone to bring in their bullet points of their year and wrap it up, and we will start getting that.
Next meeting, we also have PHA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
What do we have for PHA?
Just an update.
Yes. So I think what we should do, again, this is my opinion with PHA, because that has been moved to the city manager and legal, that we should also invite them in, because they're dealing with any type of city side.
City manager and legal, invite them in.
Well, I would, or get a report back
No, that's fine.
from them, just because what I want to make sure is that we are not asking PHA questions that are not necessarily like within
Out of our
our
range.
wheelhouse.
Well, I'm one of the people who asked them to be here.
Yeah.
I have questions and I'm gonna ask them.
And I think that's fine, but what I'm saying is that
I'm going to ask
some
them.
of those questions may be better asked to the city manager or the city attorney, as they are the ones dealing with the contract and
I have no problem
Yeah,
with,
that's all I'm saying, is that I think it's best to also have the city representation.
I'm fine with that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's totally, I think it's good to just have both sides so that
We
if.
like to not go outside legal realms.
Yeah, and just, Jen, just to, I think, I'll just speak for myself, with the idea of, I don't care, phasing, separating, whatever term you want to use with regards to Sherburne, I want to know what the impact is. That's really what I want to know. And the fact is that, like when we had the discussion the last time, it was suggested, well, let's trust them to do what they're supposed to do. If I'm spending my own money, I can trust people. When I'm dealing with the city's money, I need more than that. So that's what I want, is that I want some assurance, and I'll say it right here, that what was proposed is going to get done.
Yeah, and this is why, and I agree with you, and this is why I think that we should invite whether it's the deputy city attorney, McCord, because I know he's been dealing with this, and the city manager, because it is their job to make sure whatever's in that contract is done. So that's why I think having both entities and assurances of what the city, on their side, has in their plan to make sure the assurance, because we can hear assurances, but they're the ones who are managing the contract. So I think it's good to have them here, because they're the ones who will be holding the feet to the fire.
Understand?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think having both sides is,
And that's October 9th.
that is October 9th.
Everybody's good with it. Did we set a schedule for the rest of the year?
I think we have just
We've been doing the first Thursday.
So October 9th, November 6th.
Is it the second
I
Thursday?
thought it was the second.
Yeah,
Second Thursday, sorry.
Second Thursday.
October 9th.
I have October 9th, and then I have the 13th of November, the 11th of December.
So, in terms of drafting this, and just to make it as efficient as possible,
Yes.
parking is part of site review.
Mm-hmm.
The motion would be to refer to planning board to develop ordinance language.
Well, it's not ordinance, to move, to evaluate, and we recommend you move parking above 2 units, right?
Right,
Above.
above three, well, three.
Three and above.
required, yeah.
3 and above, we're talking units of to site plan versus in our ordinance. So we're not gonna write an ordinance, we're gonna take it out of the ordinance. So I wanna be careful about using that word.
Okay, but we do want to refer that to the planning.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they're in charge of the site plan review regulations, so the only way you can do that is that way, because city council has actually no say in our site plan review regulations.
That's true. So
That's why.
rezoning, heritage, constitution, we're on that list. We want the council to refer that to planning board?
I do have one question regarding that. If we're taking something out of an ordinance, does the city council have to have a say in that?
You're changing the ordinance, so the council has to vote to change the
We'll have
ordinance.
to vote to remove it from the
Right,
ordinance,
it'll just be deleting.
just for the leading.
But that's, yeah.
Okay, but it still would have to. Sorry, I couldn't think straight on that one. I'm like, we must have to. But how do we do
I
that?
didn't send you something, John, on the section about.
Pre-1980
Yep.
houses, great. So,
Did you say November 11th?
Yes. No, it was just, it was the 13th in November and 11th in December. It's 10, 9, 11, 13, 12, 11.
What?
Letter numbers?
So,
That bar's
hold
like,
on,
Meet on
hold on.
Thursday nights.
October
It's
9th.
Thursday. Never
today
mind.
is Thursday.
Today is like Wednesdays?
Wednesdays are PC for us.
Tuesday.
Thursdays, no, RPC's Wednesdays.
No, I know. I was thinking today was Tuesday
Oh, no, today's not Tuesday.
last week.
Okay, so if we all feel okay with that, we
Yeah.
have our straw vote, we will again, I will express that we did not have a formal vote on this, but this had been a discussion that had carried over for months. We didn't have a formal vote because we did not have a quorum, but we are bringing it forward.
you can say the majority of the committee
Yes,
supports it.
I will.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question before are we gonna have public comment?
Yes, yeah, that's why I was kind of wrapping this up to see if anyone wanted to do public comment. But I wanted to make sure all committee members felt good going forward with these boards.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. And now we will open the floor to public comment. If there's anyone who wishes to speak,
Anyone? Anyone?
please just come forward. Just state your name for the record.
Have a seat at the table.
Yes.
Love this conversation. I actually wasn't planning on speaking. I just have to
Yeah.
come to all of these, and I figured I'd come in person. But I'm Maeve Nolan. I'm with the Workforce Housing Coalition of the Greater Seacoast. I am fairly new to my position, but I bet some of you are familiar with Taylor, who I replaced, and Emmy as well is our executive director. As I said, I didn't really have anything planned, but I'm happy to contribute to the conversation, sort of give my thoughts on everything that you've talked about. I think that the zoning recommendations that you've put forward make a lot of sense. And I really appreciate that, you're looking at ways to increase supply that makes sense for Portsmouth. And, we work with a lot of different municipalities, and everything that they do is going to be different from one another. So I always appreciate when it's like a tailored approach, I guess. I think 79E is a great idea. And I agree that it would be even more beneficial to Portsmouth now that it has been expanded, for things like historical buildings, but also for the coastal resilience zones. I would say, obviously that would go through different permitting processes, but I will note that there's obviously, if you're looking at it from an affordable perspective, there's a history of environmental justice efforts around putting housing in places that are more likely to be affected by weather events. So, just being notable of that, but obviously there's an entire process around that, I'm sure. I will also note something that came to mind, part of our work is also tracking stuff that's coming in from a legislative perspective, and obviously there's been a lot of zoning amendments passed at the state level in the past few years, and especially last year. And I was in Durham the other day with their housing task force, and one of the members of their task force is Al Howland, who's their rep from Durham. And he is looking at a further expansion of 79E in this next legislative session that will also, I don't know much of the specifics, but that will also apply to new builds, which I feel like would be another added strength to adopting that in Portsmouth. You know, who knows what's going to happen with that. He is on the House Housing Committee, so he has a fair bit of sway there, but you never know. The state legislature is a whole other beast. But it would be helpful to, you know, already have 79E in place or being talked about a little bit if something like that did come along, and then it would just be an added plus. I'm interested why, I don't know if any of you know this, and I don't want to make Tracy come off of Zoom again. I was interested, she mentioned that the Historic District Commission tried in the past, but it didn't get much traction. I'm just interested by that. That was flagged in my mind, but I do think that there's a lot of use cases that you can use in the area. You mentioned Rochester. Exeter used it a ton. They actually discontinued it last year, so it is no longer applicable after 2024. And I actually don't know much about that, but I'm going to Exeter tomorrow, so maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. But I do think that maybe it was more of a phase out situation where they just figured that there were not very many buildings left or something like that. Don't know, not putting words in their mouth, but I do know that it helped a lot with their redevelopment, especially of their downtown area. And then you talked about dimensional requirements and all of the sort of specifics around the zoning. I think that's a great idea. You know, incentivizing putting multiple units into like larger houses and stuff, and also just simplifying the zoning in general makes it a lot more palatable, especially for, you know, an everyday person that is being affected more so by the need to build housing or adjust their homes, or people that are looking to, you know, take that incentive up. Or for people like me that have very little zoning experience and are trying to get a grasp on all of this. So, you know, that map had a lot of colors on it. And I think we would, you know, on behalf of us, we would definitely support looking into that. But I agree that, you know, you mentioned the time constraint. And I think that is real, and I appreciate that you all are thinking of that. But I do think that, and you all echoed this as well, but not a time to, you know, just throw in the towel, because there is still work that can be done in the next few months. And yeah, I think the last point that I was sort of thinking about was the fact that the master plan is ramping up, and trying to think of that as an asset, especially as the housing committee does or doesn't shapeshift a little bit. And I think it's a really good idea to have that, whatever final report that you have that goes to city council and wherever, also go to the master plan. I would assume that there's a committee for that.
Advisory committee.
So, you know, housing is one of the biggest issues for a master plan, now more than ever. And I'm not super familiar with, you know, when the last master plan was and stuff, but I'm sure that there's a lot to be done, especially for housing. So
There was a lot of housing in there.
so yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate all of your time.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
It's nice to see a new face.
Yes.
And welcome to the CPAS.
Thank you. Yeah.
I actually talked to Emmy just before
Oh, did you?
got hired. She told me you were starting. You hadn't started yet.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If there's no old business, then we will end the meeting.
And the meeting, we don't even need a motion. We don't need.